He thought he had all the power, until the man he humiliated pulled out a badge that changed everything. Before we dive into this intense story, I've got a challenge for you. If you believe in justice, comment 1 below and hit that subscribe button. If you don't, well, hit the like button anyway and keep watching. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Sergeant Travis Reynolds gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white with tension. The city of Brookside was changing, and not for the better in his eyes. His department had just appointed a black female captain, and he couldn't stomach it. "They really put one of them in charge of us?" he spat, shaking his head. 15 damn years on the force, and now I gotta answer to someone who doesn't even know what real police work is. Beside him, Officer Jake Miller, a rookie barely 6 months in, shifted uncomfortably. He didn't agree, but what could he say? Travis was his superior, and pushing back meant career suicide. "Maybe she earned it," Jake muttered. Travis let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Earned it? Please. People like her don't earn things. They get handed them. Just wait, she'll ruin this department." The anger in his voice crackled like a live wire, and it was only getting worse. Travis Reynolds had spent years patrolling the streets of Brookside, and in his mind, he knew exactly who belonged where. When his eyes landed on the black SUV parked on the curb, something in his gut twisted. A black woman, dressed sharply in a business suit, sat behind the wheel. "Look at that," he muttered, his lip curling in disgust. "That car doesn't belong in this part of town. Someone like her doesn't belong here." Jake Miller, riding shotgun, stole a glance at the vehicle. There was nothing suspicious, no broken taillights, no erratic movement, no violation. The woman was just sitting there. But Travis had already made up his mind. "Sergeant, she's not doing anything illegal," Jake said cautiously. Travis scoffed. "We're cops, kid. We don't need a reason. If you look hard enough, you'll always find one." Jake's stomach tightened. He knew this was wrong. But how do you tell a 15-year veteran with a notorious temper that he was profiling someone? Before he could say another word, Travis flipped on the siren, his grin widening as the SUV's taillights flickered, signaling compliance. The woman smoothly pulled to the side of the road. Jake could almost feel the tension shift in the air. A storm brewing. As they approached the vehicle, the woman had already rolled down her window, her calm gaze meeting Travis's hostile glare. "License and registration," he barked. She handed them over without hesitation. Her voice was steady, controlled. "Is there a problem, officer?" Travis barely glanced at the documents before sneering. "Just a routine check. What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "Driving to a business meeting," she replied evenly. Her composure only fueled his irritation. She wasn't afraid. He wanted her to be afraid. Travis leaned in closer, his eyes narrowing. "Nice car for a meeting. You sure it's yours?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. The woman had done nothing wrong. She had every right to be here. But Travis was digging for a reason to escalate. "Sergeant," Jake whispered, trying to de-escalate. "Her papers check out. Let's just move on." Travis snapped. "Shut the hell up, Miller." And then, before anyone could react, he yanked open the car door. The woman barely had time to unbuckle her seatbelt before Travis's hand clamped around her wrist and ripped her from the vehicle. She tumbled onto the asphalt, her purse spilling onto the pavement. Jake froze. "What the hell are you doing?" the woman shouted, struggling to stand. But Travis wasn't done. With a vicious shove, he slammed her against the hood of her SUV. The metal thudded against her shoulder, forcing a sharp cry of pain from her lips. "Think you can just roll around here like you own the damn place?" Travis hissed into her ear. "I bet there's something shady going on. Maybe you've got something in that purse, huh?" Jake's breath hitched. This was wrong. So very, very wrong. And yet he did nothing. This is getting out of control. Do you think this officer will face consequences? Comment justice if you believe the truth will come out, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories like this. The sharp clang of metal against flesh echoed through the street as the woman's shoulder smashed against the hood of her own SUV. A gasp of pain escaped her lips, but she didn't crumble. Instead, she braced herself against the impact, sucking in a breath as she fought to remain composed. Travis pressed his forearm against her back, pinning her down. "You got drugs on you?" He sneered, his voice dripping with venom. Maybe a weapon. You people always got something. Jake stood frozen, his heart pounding against his ribs. This had gone too far. Way too far. "Sergeant, stop!" he blurted, stepping forward. But Travis barely acknowledged him. His eyes burned with fury, locked onto his target like a predator to prey. He yanked her arm behind her back, twisting it hard enough to make her wince. "You think you can just drive a fancy car through my streets like you own the place?" Travis growled. "I bet you've got a stolen ID in that purse. Let's take a look, shall we?" The woman gritted her teeth, refusing to show fear. "You have no right to do this," she hissed. Travis let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Sweetheart, I'm the law. I have every right." And then, in a move so blatant it sent a chill down Jake's spine, Travis reached into her purse and pulled out a small bag of white powder. Jake's stomach dropped. "What the?" he stammered. He had just seen the contents of her purse spill onto the ground. There was nothing like that inside. The woman jerked her head around, her eyes blazing. "You planted that," she snapped. Travis grinned, flashing his badge like it was a shield of immunity. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said smugly. "But I do know that possession with intent to distribute is a serious charge. And lucky for you, I'm feeling generous today." Jake felt like he was going to be sick. His mind raced. What the hell was he supposed to do? A crowd had started to gather, drawn by the commotion. Some had their phones out, recording the scene. Jake saw faces twisted in outrage, heard murmurs turning into angry shouts. Travis noticed too, and his expression darkened. "Back the hell up," he barked at the onlookers. "This is police business." But the woman, still pinned against her car, didn't cower. Despite the rage burning in her eyes, she remained eerily calm. "You just made the biggest mistake of your career, Sergeant," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in fire. And in that moment, Jake knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The tension in the air was suffocating. The crowd had grown, their murmurs turning into a low roar of outrage. Phones were raised, cameras rolling, capturing every second of the nightmare unfolding. But Travis Reynolds didn't care. He had her pinned against the SUV, the planted bag of drugs clutched between his fingers like a trophy. His grin was vicious, his confidence unshaken. "You really thought you could get away with this?" he taunted. "You people always think you're untouchable. But guess what? You're not." The woman didn't flinch. She didn't beg, didn't plead. Instead, she inhaled deeply, eyes locked onto his. There was something unnerving in her stare, something that made Jake's skin prickle. Then, with a slow, calculated movement, she reached into the inner pocket of her blazer. Jake's breath caught. "Ma'am, don't," he started, thinking she was going for a weapon. But what she pulled out wasn't a gun. It was a badge, a high-ranking police badge. The color drained from Jake's face. His blood ran cold. She turned slightly, just enough for Travis to see it clearly. Brookside Police Department. Captain Monica Kelly. Jake's heart stopped. Travis froze, the arrogant smirk melting from his face like ice thrown into fire. "No." His voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "No, that's not possible." But it was. The woman he had just beaten, humiliated, and framed for drug possession was his new commanding officer. The weight of the revelation hit like a bullet. The crowd erupted. People were shouting now, pointing, filming, cursing Travis's name. The realization rippled through them like a shockwave. A white cop brutalizing a black woman, not knowing she was the highest-ranking officer in their department. Travis staggered back, his world crumbling beneath him. This is a joke," he stammered, his confidence evaporating. "You're lying." Captain Monica Kelly straightened her blazer, brushing off the dirt and the humiliation he had tried to bury her under. "No joke, Sergeant," she said, her voice razor-sharp. "And you just threw your entire career into the gutter." Jake wanted to disappear. He had stood by and watched. He had let this happen. Now the consequences were crashing down like an avalanche. A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. Backup was coming. And Travis Reynolds was finished. This moment just flipped the entire story upside down. If you're as hooked as I am, type plot twist in the comments and stay till the end, because it's not over yet. The wail of approaching sirens cut through the chaos like a blade. The crowd, now fully enraged, closed in around them, their shouts growing louder. Phones were recording, capturing every humiliating second. The scene had already gone viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. But Travis Reynolds couldn't move. His breath hitched, his muscles locked in sheer disbelief. His mind raced for a way out, a way to flip this situation back in his favor. But there was none. Captain Monica Kelly, the woman he had brutalized, humiliated, and framed, stood before him unshaken, her piercing gaze dripping with quiet fury. "You still think you're in control, Sergeant?" she asked, her voice deadly calm. Travis's face twitched, his usual bravado slipping. His hand, still gripping the planted bag of drugs, trembled slightly. "This is a setup," he blurted. "This is some kind of—" "Shut up." Her voice sliced through his excuses like a razor through flesh. "You think you can plant drugs on me? Beat me? Humiliate me? And what? Walk away with a slap on the wrist?" She continued, stepping forward. The rage in her eyes was volcanic. Travis stumbled back, his confidence shattered. The squad cars skidded onto the scene, their lights flashing like a judgment from above. Officers poured out, guns drawn, but not at Monica. Not at the crowd. At him. "Sergeant Reynolds, hands in the air." The order hit him like a gut punch. He didn't move. He couldn't. Jake Miller, still frozen in place, watched as Travis's world collapsed around him. His superior, once so untouchable, so sure of his own power, now stood at the edge of ruin. "On your knees, Reynolds," another officer barked. Travis's eyes darted to Monica, searching for a way out, a last shred of authority, but there was none. Only judgment, only consequences. The crowd chanted for his arrest, voices rising like a roar of justice overdue. With no more options, Travis dropped to his knees, his hands slowly rising above his head. Two officers rushed forward, grabbing him, shoving him against the very same SUV he had slammed Monica onto. The moment his wrists snapped into the cold steel of handcuffs, the finality of it hit him like a freight train. "Captain," he croaked, desperation lacing his voice. Monica leaned in, her voice like ice over fire. "You're not a cop anymore, Reynolds. You're a disgrace." The world watched as the man who once wielded power like a weapon was dragged away, powerless. Justice had arrived, and it was just the beginning. The squad car doors slammed shut, muffling the shouts and jeers from the crowd as Sergeant Travis Reynolds sat handcuffed in the back seat, his face drained of all color. His eyes darted around, wild with desperation, but there was no escape. The weight of his downfall was crushing him, pressing down like a steel boot on his chest. Outside, Brookside PD was in chaos. Officers scrambled to contain the scene, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and the whole world had seen it. The videos were already being uploaded, spreading like a raging inferno across social media. Captain Monica Kelly stood firm, her jaw clenched, her hands steady. The woman who had just been assaulted, humiliated, and framed was now standing in complete control. Jake Miller, still shaken, stepped toward her, his voice uneven with guilt. "Captain, I—" She turned, her sharp gaze cutting straight through him. "You stood there," she said, her voice low but burning with fire. "You let it happen." Jake swallowed hard, shame curling around his gut like a tight noose. "I wanted to stop him," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "I swear, Captain, I wanted to." "But you didn't." Her words slammed into him, leaving no room for excuses. Jake's chest tightened. She was right. He had let fear control him, had let loyalty to a corrupt partner outweigh justice. But then her tone shifted. "You have one chance to make this right," she said, stepping closer. "Tell the truth. Everything you saw. Everything he did. No lies, no cover-ups." Jake's breath hitched. This was it. If he stayed silent, he would be just as guilty as Travis. If he spoke out, he would lose everything, but he would finally do the right thing. The noise of the crowd roared in the background, voices demanding justice. Brookside PD was watching. The entire city was watching. Jake exhaled, his hands clenching into fists. "I'll testify." His voice was stronger now, filled with resolve. "I'll tell everything." Monica nodded. The steel in her eyes softened just slightly. "Then you might still have a future here, Miller," she said. "But only if you prove you deserve it." Nearby, officers loaded Travis into a transport van, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. "This is a witch hunt," he screamed. "You think this changes anything? The system will protect me?" Monica turned, her stance unwavering. "Not this time," she said, her voice like a gavel slamming down in a courtroom. As the van doors slammed shut, the message was clear. The corrupt had fallen, and justice was just getting started. This story is more than just a shocking twist. It's a wake-up call. It reveals the dangers of abusing power, judging others unfairly, and letting prejudice dictate actions. Sergeant Reynolds thought he could act without consequences, but justice caught up to him. In life, we often assume we know people based on their appearance, background, or status. But the truth is, we never really know who we're dealing with. Respect, integrity, and fairness should guide us, not assumptions or bias. This incident reminds us that power is not immunity, and those who misuse it will face the consequences. It also teaches us that silence is complicity. Staying quiet in the face of injustice only strengthens corruption. Jake Miller learned that lesson the hard way, but he chose to do the right thing before it was too late. And that's a choice we all have to make. Will we speak up, or will we stand by and watch? The world is watching, and change starts with us. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories.